Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Evans, and I am joined, as always, by Jeff Cohen. We are here in July, Jeff. We've made it to what is inevitably going to be one of the most exciting and most hectic months in White Sox franchise in the past few seasons, at least. This is going to be an interesting one. This month has got a lot to do, a lot of stuff happening. Today, we are going to be joined by the wonderful Pete Flaherty of Baseball America, a friend of mine, and just absolutely crushes the college baseball scene. We are going to do an entire MLB draft preview from a White Sox lens. Pete's going to give us all of his thoughts on, everything going down in the draft, where he sees the White Sox going with the fifth pick, some possibilities in the later rounds, some high school guys, all of the above. Pete Flaherty does a great job. He's going to hop on to this episode very shortly to join us and talk everything MLB draft. But we are going to get to some of the small headlines around the White Sox organization before we get to Pete's interview. So we're just going to talk about a few things briefly here, and then we'll turn it over to our MLB draft preview with Pete Flaherty. But first of all, how you doing today, Jeff?
Doing all right, Elijah. And my first question is for you. You saw Drew Thorpe in person. Tell me what you thought.
Yeah, it was great. So I haven't got to see Drew Thorpe in person yet. As I'm back in Chicago, I'm visiting for a few weeks here, so I was able to get to a Thorpe start in person. I haven't seen him yet, and this was awesome. It was really good to see him throw. He looked really good. I mean, honestly, I was a little bit far out, so I didn't get to see quite enough. I watched back on some of the replays, some of the stuff, but Thorpe just commands the mound, Jeff. He gets to the mound. He's a walking quality start. That's what I tweeted from the game. That is how I look at Drew Thorpe. You're not gonna go back and you're gonna watch a Thorpe start and say, wow, he just dominated every hitter, but you're going to go back and you're going to watch a guy who's attacking the zone. He's trusting his stuff right now after that one blow up start. Like, this is 2 in a row now where, like, you see him, like, this is the Drew Thorpe we've expected. 3 of his 4 starts now, he's allowed 2 runs or less. He's not walking a lot of guys in his last start. He was just pounding the zone. The changeup was good. The slider was good. The cutter was good this week. He had a few really nice cutters, which was good to see because we didn't see a ton of those from him in his first 2 starts. He's going to give you 6 good innings every freaking week, Jeff. That's the guy that Drew Thorpe is, and that's what we want to see from him. And after one bad game, we've seen him bounce back with 2 excellent starts in a row. I cannot wait to watch this guy the rest of the season because he's going to be a big part of this rotation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so really exciting stuff from Drew Thorpe. We're pumped that he's here. Let's run through the minor league system real quick with some records as we head into the full last 2.5 months of minor league seasons. Going into today, Charlotte comes in at 36-43. Birmingham comes in at what is Birmingham? Birmingham comes in at 44-31. They've already clinched a playoff spot. Winston-Salem comes in at 35-40. Some good signs from Winston lately, and I think a lot more talent going to be there pretty soon. And then Kannapolis comes in at 44-31. They have also already clinched a playoff spot from the first half of the season. And then the ACL White Sox are 16-25, and the DSL White Sox are 5-15. So not great down in the DSL. But all in all, some really exciting stuff. We have 2 news breaks recently to get to. The first one is Kai Busch is heading to Charlotte. We talked about that. That just happened earlier today as we're recording. He is going to be joining the Charlotte Knights after a really strong season. Busch has a 2.12 ERA this season. Opponents are hitting 180 against him. It's not overpowering, but Busch has just been consistently solid all season in Birmingham. Very deserving of this promotion. A 24-year-old guy who really struggled last year with injuries, coming back after the trade to the White Sox, just couldn't find his groove. This entire season, he looks healthy, he looks confident, and he looks good, Jeff.
All of a sudden here in Charlotte, we've got 4 young starters: Maestrini, Busch, Dominguez, and Burke. And Davis Martin will be here, I would guess, in a matter of, maybe later in July or August.
100%. I was just going to say,
that's the other here.
Yeah, the other news today is Davis Martin is starting a rehab stint in Winston-Salem, so he is likely going to take that spot. That means somebody from that Winston rotation will be heading up to Birmingham. We will talk more about that next week to fill Busch's spot, but Winston is getting Davis Martin now, so he's joining the Winston-Salem squad, where he's going to kind of make probably 3 to 4 starts is my guess, depending on how he feels, right? This is a guy who's already pitched at the major league level, right? So he probably will spend a decent amount of time in Charlotte. He may get back up to the White Sox later at the very end of the season. They're going to be patient with him, though, coming off of an injury, right? But he's probably only going to make 3 starts in Winston is my guess. Could even be 2 if things go really well, to be honest. And then he'll make his way back to Charlotte as well. So like you said, this Charlotte rotation is all of a sudden pretty fun. Kai Busch is very deserving of a promotion. Mason Adams can't be far behind, where we know he's on the way as well sooner than later, right? So we're excited. This is a good time. So Busch, congrats to Busch on heading up to Charlotte. I'm pumped to see what he can do there because, that's a guy that has really succeeded in Birmingham, and then Davis Martin getting in some rehab starts. So great stuff all around on that front. Good to see both those guys moving to the next level. The next brief headline, as we just kind of zoom through the main topics we want to focus on this interview with Pete, George Wolkow, Jeff, George Wolkow. Shout out to my guy George. He looks good. This is an 18-year-old who looked overmatched. We can be honest, right? Like he had a few good swings, but in his first week or two in single A, he looked like he was overmatched. He was striking out a lot. He was struggling to get consistent contact. And here we are. What is he not? I mean, how many at-bats does he have in Kannapolis now? It can't be many more than maybe 100 or so, if that. Probably still. And George Wolkow now, he had a 2-homer game this past week. He had a homer the week earlier in the week as well. But it's not just homers, right? Like his at-bats look better. He's taking longer counts. He's hitting more line drives. He's striking out less. He's being more patient at the plate. The adjustments he has made already in like 3-4 weeks now in single A, pretty crazy to me. It's pretty impressive in my opinion, just to see how much he's adjusted and worked on things. You've been in Candy a little bit. What do you take away from just the quick adjustments made by George in 1 month in Kannapolis?
Yeah, I was at the 2-home run game, and that was so exciting, man. He just crushed those. But I will point out, the 2 home runs were hit off fastballs, and it's still a work in progress, learning how to hit breaking pitches. But it'll come. And you're right. His approach looks better, trying to hit the ball up the middle more, and he's still working walks, so he still has good plate discipline. Just the one missing element is consistently jumping on breaking pitches.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to take some time. That's not a guarantee at all, right? It's going to take a little bit of time for him to get rolling, but seeing him already start to improve at 18, right? Let's remember 18 years old. So seeing him improve already off the bat in such limited time at that level. So 90 plate appearances. I just saw 79 at bats, but 90 plate appearances with, 9 walks, 5 home runs now at the level, 18 total hits. He's got a OPS over 750 now. So, I mean, it's coming together, right? Like it's slowly but surely. He should be in Kannapolis probably this entire season, but he looks a lot better. I'm excited to see where things will take him from here. So really exciting to see that. Also in Kannapolis, worth mentioning the no-hitter this week, Jeff.
Yeah.
Seth Keener led it the way. Seth Keener has looked really good in his past few starts. Very impressive stuff from Keener lately. His slider was excellent this week. He led the way, and then it got finished off by the bullpen in Kannapolis. But in general, just a really, really impressive game. The second organizational no-hitter this season. How cool is that? So that's just, I mean, Charlotte did one earlier this year, and then now Kannapolis doing it. It was Keener, and then it was Luke Bell, and then it was Nick Altermat, I believe, that were the 3 pitchers in that game.
Right.
So really impressive stuff from all 3 of those guys, led off by Keener, who I know you've been a big fan of him when you saw him this year, even though he's had some ups and downs, right? Like this is a guy still learning how to be a starter, but Keener in his last few starts has looked phenomenal, Jeff.
Yeah, I wasn't at the no-hitter. I was at last week's start, and I talked to both he and Pat Leland. Pat said in his report, he told the White Sox it's probably the best he's looked all year, and
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. For 5 innings, they couldn't touch him, and then had a couple bad breaks in the 6th, but still, managed to limit the damage. And then what does he do? He has his best outing of the year, and how does he top that? With 6 innings of no-hit ball.
Right.
I'd really like to see how that plays against high A hitters. And
I agree.
Hopefully train's going to leave the station soon.
Like we've mentioned, right? Like Davis Martin just is taking a spot in Winston now, right? But when Davis Martin goes to Charlotte, I have to imagine Keener's one of the early favorites, if not the favorite, to get a shot at Winston, just because his stuff is really good, right? Like it's a process. He's not a complete pitcher yet, but his stuff is excellent, and he continues recently to look better and better, right? And the command is coming together, right? He's able to go 6 innings the last 2 games, even with that blow up inning last time in the 6th. 2 games in a row with 6 innings thrown. He hasn't done all season, so he's getting those starter innings, and he's doing it by limiting pitches and by throwing more strikes than he was earlier in the season. To go along with 3 starts in a row with 6+ strikeouts now, 7 this week, 6 the week before, 8 the week before that. So it's really coming together for Keener, and that's great to see because 3rd round pick with a lot of pedigree, and I was really excited once I talked to him last year to see what he could do on the mound this year, and now we're seeing in June, he's really finding his groove, which is great to see. And talking about another guy that's finding his groove, 2 more guys, so we're going to go up to Birmingham for now. Actually, I just thought of a second guy we need to talk about, Tyler Schweitzer on the pitching side of things. Tyler Schweitzer, like we talked about this last week, neither of us expected him to be in Birmingham until probably later in the season. He gets the call when Thorpe goes up and has just been, is he better? Like, right? Like he's been way better in Birmingham than he was in Winston. And Birmingham's one of the, I mean, that right? Like it's really impressive to see.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it is a pitcher friendly league, right? Like Birmingham's a place where a lot of pitchers will succeed more than hitters will. But at the same time, for Schweitzer, 3 starts in Double A now. And this is a guy that's now gone 7 innings, 5 innings, and 7 innings. He's allowed a total of 4 runs allowed in 3 starts with Birmingham. He looks great. He's not walking anybody. He's pounding the zone, and he's just getting outs.
Yeah. And a great example of, we've got all these young arms in Kannapolis and Winston, and, a couple of them are going to pop just like he did.
Yeah, 100%. So another guy that under the radar guy, but has been great. One more guy I want to mention in Birmingham before we get to this interview with Pete, Matt Hogan, Jeff. Matt Hogan completely skips over Winston-Salem because of an injury. Terrell Tatum's back now. There's no injury, but he's staying there because how are you going to promote a guy that has played 9 games and has an OPS of 1,200 almost, Jeff? Matt Hogan has been exceptional. He just got to Birmingham, skips over high A completely. He has, equal amount of walks to strikeouts, 7 walks, 7 strikeouts, 8 hits already in 9 games. He's getting on base all the time for Birmingham, and he's been one of the better hitters in Birmingham's lineup after, starting his season okay in Kannapolis, right? He was picking it up later on, right? He was getting hot a little bit, but this is a guy whose numbers are pretty pedestrian in Kannapolis, goes up 2 levels and is now the best hitter in the Birmingham lineup this past week. I mean, baseball's a crazy sport, am I right?
And here's a little trivia for you. He was in Kannapolis when they clinched. He goes to Birmingham. He was there when they clinched. He got to play in 2 clinching games.
Yep, pretty impressive stuff. So really good things around the farm system. Noah Schultz with another great game this week. Some really impressive stuff from him as well in Birmingham. Plenty of other guys to talk about. Next week, we will dive into all of our player topics in addition to some trade deadline talk because that's going to start picking up. I have a Garrett Crochet mock trade article that's going to be dropping tomorrow, I believe. So look out for that. But without further ado, let's get to this interview with Pete Flaherty of Baseball America so we can talk some college baseball and some draft. We're now welcoming in Pete Flaherty of Baseball America, a good friend of mine, a guy that's worked with Just Baseball in the past, does amazing work at Baseball America. We are going to bring on Pete to talk all things draft. We're going to dive into the White Sox draft, just the first 4 picks before the White Sox, some later round guys, and everything in between. Really appreciate you hopping on, Pete. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really fired up.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. You are one of the absolute best when it comes to draft coverage. So really excited to dive into this. I know White Sox fans we're entering July. We were just talking about in our intro, Jeff and I, that, July is going to be a big month for the White Sox organization, right? Like this team is heading in the direction of, just stocking up on youth nonstop right now. They're going to trade a lot of pieces. So between now and the end of the month, you've got a draft of talent coming in and you've got a bunch of trade chips that are going to come in as well. So a lot of influx of talent to an already impressive farm system right now, which is a really cool spot to be in for us as guys who watch prospects and cover it all the time. So the draft is going to be a big part of that. First, where are you at right now in terms of just what you're doing and reading ahead of the draft, just how you feel about the draft in general leading up to it in 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, it's kind of been the same narrative surrounding the draft almost for the entirety of the cycle. You have this handful of guys up at the top, whether it's 8 to 10 guys, maybe even another one, depending on how you look at it. It's this top tier or so of players. And then it feels like it could go haywire pretty quickly. And it could go haywire pretty quickly even before like that 8 to 10 pick threshold. So I know that this draft gets a lot of heat for its lack of depth and lack of talent. And while maybe, at least on paper, it doesn't feel like it has the same amount of depth as last year, maybe the same amount of star power as last year, I'm pretty bullish on some of the guys at the top. And there are also some guys sprinkled in there and who are projected middle of the first round type guys or second or third, even a little bit into the middle of day 2, later part of day 2 that I think could be pretty high value picks. So as is the case with every draft, there's value to be found in every round and every single day. So I'm really excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's exactly how it seems this year. It seems like there's a lot of things up in the air and a lot that can change between now and draft day, which is an exciting place to be, right? Like last year was crazy with, the number 1 pick swirling 3 different times. And then this year, we could see a lot of the same elements in the early picks in this draft. We'll start with the top of the draft before we get to the White Sox. The first pick, right, we've got Travis Bazzana of Oregon State for our listeners that aren't quite as familiar with some of these players. And then we've got Charlie Condon of Georgia. These 2 guys have been looked at as the top 2 for a while. I think it's been, since mid part of the college season where it's been like these are the 1 and 2. What do you think right now with Cleveland? Because we've heard a lot of things about how Cleveland wants to go underslot, or they don't want to go overslot at least, right? And it seems like Condon is kind of firm on a really high price. Bazana pretty high as well. What are you hearing at the number one pick right now?
I think I'm hearing what everyone else is what the chatter has been for everyone else, and it's still like, it's Condon and Bazana, and then I've also heard a lot of steam and momentum surrounding JJ Weatherholt at West Virginia. I personally, defensively, I know that people were really impressed with how he looked in the spring and later on in the season. In regionals, he made a couple of really good plays. I saw it earlier on in the season, and I wasn't sold at him at shortstop. So I think people are trying to hold on to the shortstop narrative a little bit with him. Like, I think he's more of a shortstop than Bazana is, but I still think long term he ends up at second base. But from a pure hit tool standpoint, he can go toe to toe with Travis. Like, he is the only guy in this entire draft class who can go toe to toe with Travis when it comes to hit ability and feel for the barrel and just the advanced offensive skill set. And he also has a little bit of a knack to drive the baseball with authority to all fields, and he's also an impact runner with his legs. Like, there's a lot to like with Weatherholt. I think the one question mark surrounding him, though, is he's had a nagging hamstring injury that's dating back to last summer or so, and now he's an excellent makeup guy. Like, it's plus 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 plus. Like, he played through it no problem on the Cape and with USA, but it is something to look out for. So I think it's Condon, Bazana, and Weatherholt, and maybe the guy with the most momentum right now is Weatherholt. Like, there's legit smoke there.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. That's what I've been hearing in a lot of places as well. And in some mocks, we've even started to see Weatherholt getting mocked number one because of that. How much underslot do you think he could potentially go if you look at that value at number one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, in this year's draft where the slot values are so obscenely high, like, it could be, I don't want to stick a firm number on it, but like, it could be a little bit of a haircut. I think if I were picking at one, I'd be in the firm camp of not getting too cute with it and just taking the guy that I felt was best, and I'd be pounding the table for, and just trying to make it work slot value wise. And the full slot value of 10 plus million, whatever it is a little steep, but I don't know how much of a cut it could be, but I don't expect it to be like this severe, like, groundbreaking haircut up at the top.
Right, that's what it seems like. Yeah, so that's interesting. So Cleveland, those three guys being the target, depending on where they go, is Cincinnati kind of just taking the either Condon or Bazana route most likely, in your opinion?
Yeah, I feel like that would make the most sense. And like, they're in such an unenviable position picking at two, because it's like, Condon, Bazana, or Weatherholt, more than likely one of those three guys will go 1-1, and then they're sitting there with two of the three that didn't go 1-1, plus this other pool of Chase Burns, Jack Caglione, Hagen Smith, Braden Montgomery. If you want to get a little wild, like, James Tibbs is still sitting there. So, like, they could go a number of different directions. I don't know. Like, I feel like they'd probably go impact bat. That would be my best guess. But, again, like, they are, like, even though the draft is kind of getting dinged a little bit for its lack of depth, there are still plenty of enticing options there. So I don't know. I think that when all's said and done, though, they go Bazana or Condon, whoever's not there, or Weatherholt, whatever it ends up being.
Right. That makes sense. And then go ahead, Jeff. You got something?
Well, I was just going to ask Pete, regardless how the top three shake out, then you got four, and then you got the White Sox. And I'm just kind of curious how you see that unfolding.
Yeah, like, similar to Cleveland a little bit, like, the White Sox are also going to be sitting there with one of these really high-end talent guys still on the board. Like, whether it's Chase Burns still sitting there, Hagen Smith, Braden Montgomery is probably going to be available at 5, like James Tibbs. They could go a number of different directions and add a game-changing type of talent to an already, I think, a pretty impressive system and an ever-improving system.
Yep.
I'd love to see them snag someone like Hagen. Like, Hagen Smith, I have a hair above Chase Burns. I love the fact that he's a left-handed pitcher, and he's got the stuff that he has, and the strike throwing has improved. He's got a good body. He's kid's a legit workhorse. But the two-way, like with Caglione, I think with him, he's this really supremely talented player, and there are enticing tools on both sides of the baseball. You've got a 6'5" athletic left-handed pitcher up to 97, 98, up to topping out at 100 with a plus changeup and a serviceable cutter. And then at the plate, you've got this, again, the athleticism really shines in the box. Like, he moves really, really well for his size. He's got thunderous bat speed, monstrous raw power. But for lack of better phrasing, like, two-way players at the big league level, at least impact two-way players, don't really exist. So, like, you've got to put him in one camp, and I think everyone is pretty firmly in the hitter camp. And, I would probably go a different route at 5 if I were picking there, and snag Braden Montgomery, who I really like, or even James Tibbs, who's a guy that I really, really like. But man, like, the idea of potentially snagging Hagen Smith there is really, really interesting.
That's fascinating because so we've talked about this a lot, and like the system with the White Sox is super strong on pitching right now. So the way I've been looking at the draft is like you got to go hitter first and get that premium bat, and then you can get some pitching depth later on. But it's interesting to think about the possibility, because if Smith and Burns are sitting there and you've got your 3-4 hitters that you really wanted off the board, then it's like, do you just go for the high upside arm? So going back a little bit, do you think Colorado sticks? So Colorado is a third pick for those listening. Do you think Colorado sticks with their recent trend of just hammering pitchers and hoping they're good and can survive in Coors? Or do you think they stray away from that this year?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a time for them to do it, it's to snag a pitcher they feel pretty confident in. I think it's at 3, and they take whoever they like best of Burns or Smith.
Yeah.
And man, it's a really fascinating debate. I wouldn't be shocked if they snag who they prefer there of the two, because I think after that the waters get a little muddied, and they are like the number of arms that they're probably thinking that they feel like a slam dunk to make it to the bigs and potentially headline a rotation, like that really, really thins out after Burns and Smith, not just for them with the Coors Field aspect, but for everyone. Like, there's a lot of risk associated or lack of upside with basically everyone else outside of those two guys. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if they just, again, pull the trigger on Burns or Smith.
That's kind of the way I've been seeing it too, because those are the guys where it's like those are the two ace guys in this draft, right? It's very clear they're the two top 10 pitchers that we're looking at right now. And at 3, it's a high pick, but it's hard to pass up on either of those guys for a team that constantly needs pitching, right? So let me give you a little bit of I'm going to ask you one more name, then I'm going to give a hypothetical. But Connor Griffin is a guy that has a lot of steam as well among White Sox fans and just the White Sox community. The top high school guy in this draft, I think, is that Bryce Rayner and Connor Griffin are kind of right there. So you can throw it both to you, honestly, in this. But if the White Sox are to kind of lean into this rebuild, right, and they're going to go the option of potentially trading a Crochet, trading a Robert at the deadline, and really just leaning into the youth, do you think it makes sense to kind of just go for one of the two super high upside high school guys? And what do you see and think about those two?
Again, that's another route that they could go. Like, they could go so many different ways, and a lot of those ways have them adding someone who could be a really high impact player for a long time. But sticking with the high schoolers, with Griffin, I think at 5, you got to be all the way in. Like, he is an absolute tool shed, perhaps the most tooled out player. Like him and Vance Honeycutt, he's perhaps the most tooled out player, you can make the argument, in the entire draft class. Like, it's real stuff, and he's got a great body. He's a sick athlete. There's a ton of arm strength. I kind of like him on the mound a little bit, maybe even more so than on the position player side, which is a little bit of a hot take. But you got to be all the way in on Griffin to take him at 5, because the upside is there, but like a Bubba Starling type of floor is also there. So like when it comes to the two high schoolers, I kind of prefer Bryce Rayner. 6'3", 6'4", shortstop, really good body. The confidence that he's going to be able to stick on the left side of the infield, especially at shortstop, is really, really high. The bat, especially the pure hit tool, has improved by leaps and bounds, especially this season. He's playing really high quality competition when he goes to Harvard Westlake in Southern California. Like, he is seeing the best of the best in a really good league. So I kind of prefer Rayner to Griffin. If I were the White Sox, I'd go with the college guy that I like the most. But yeah, those two guys are the top 2 preps for sure.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so let me throw this kind of hypothetical scenario to you. Obviously, I think it's pretty much a given that if Bazana or Condon fell, they would be a pretty obvious choice for the White Sox. I think it'd be really hard to pass on either of those guys at 5. Assuming those two are off the board, and assuming they don't go pitcher, I think one will probably go to Colorado anyways. But assuming it's not going to be Bazana, Condon, Smith, or Burns, outside of those 4, who do you think it would be the most likely? And then also on the flip side of it, who you would pick at that 5 spot?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
And
I'm putting a little pressure on you, but
no, I love it. Okay, starting off with most likely. Oh gosh, I know Braden Montgomery was a popular name. I feel like it's going to be one of, like in this hypothetical where the 2 big guys are gone and they don't go pitcher. I could see Caglione or Montgomery for sure. Caglione we touched on a little bit, but with Montgomery, best arm, like he's an impact defender in right field. Like he's a really good athlete. The arm is a legit 70, approaching an 80. It's a really explosive operation in the box, especially from the left side. I think he should just ditch the right-handed swing.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah,
when he gets the pro ball, but like move again, super explosive in the box, big time bat speed. It's plus power that he's got no issue tapping to in game. And then what I've been most impressed with is the hit tool and the approach that has continued to improve and improve year over year and season over season. Like that is a really encouraging and promising trend with Montgomery. And as a cherry on top to the profile with him, the makeup is like quadruple plus. Like he is a top-notch human being. So I feel like one of those 2 would make sense. And then who I would take, like, you know, it's a hot take. I'd take James Tibbs from Florida State. Like I'm all the way in on him. Like
I know that's your guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You could leave the yard one day and have 60s on your card with hit, power, and his arm in right field. And the routes in right field are a little crude and scenic at times, but he's got the arm strength to stick over there. I saw him really, really good on the Cape. Like everything translates with Wood, and he handles himself really well against high quality competition and high quality pitching. The swing and the swing mechanics are really advanced. Like it is a very polished and mature offensive skill set. So I'd go with Tibbs. Like I feel like there's a perfect blend of, I think, a reasonably high floor with him. Like if you're looking to mitigate risk, like the floor is there with Tibbs. And then I also think the ceiling is there for him to be an impact big leaguer eventually. So like they could go so many routes. Like I think in 2.5 weeks, whenever the draft is, July 14th is day 1. Like I think White Sox fans are going to be pretty happy with whoever they take with that first pick, because there's going to be reason to be really excited and hopeful no matter who it ends up being.
Yeah, I completely agree.
As I'm sure you know, right field has also been a black hole for the White Sox for a long time. And I think Elijah and I have pretty much come to the conclusion that outfield is the weakest position in the farm system. So both those picks sound like just what the doctor ordered, even though I know that doesn't drive the decision. You take the best guy you can, but and it'd be great.
You got to, to a degree, you have to consider it, right? I mean,
It would
there's
be
been
great.
the outfield, the corner outfields have been weak for a long time, and any of those guys seem like they are competent, quality outfielders for sure.
I think at that stage, like they're just going to take the best guy available, but and it is a nice cherry on top for Montgomery and Tibbs, that especially Montgomery, the corner profile.
Yeah, definitely.
Does he have much power along with the hit tool?
Yeah, with Montgomery, like it's plus power, and the hit tool has really improved. I think that's what I've been most impressed with Montgomery, is both at between Stanford and Texas A&M, and then also on the Cape for his stint up here. It was impressive. So again, similar to Tibbs, like everything in his game translates with Wood, which I think is becoming a more important question to answer now in how the college game is today. So he's legit. Everything you see with Montgomery, there's no fluff there.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think Tibbs would be a guy? Because this is another thing to consider with the White Sox, right? Like last year, they were able to go underslot with Jacob Gonzalez, and that allowed them to sign a guy like George Wolkow in the 7th round and overslot him really high to get him to pull him away from high school. So, do you think Tibbs is a guy that I don't think Montgomery or Cags would be necessarily, because they're both kind of have been in that 5 to 4 to 7 range in a lot of mocks and everything. Do you think Tibbs is a guy that could go, somewhat underslot and save some money for some later rounds?
Yeah, definitely. I think he would be a haircut kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point with him, for sure.
See, that's appealing, honestly. And I think that's part of why Connor Griffin and Bryce Rainer is also an option, because the high school guys, yes, they're really talented, but I think they could also probably be somewhat underslot haircut guys at the 5th pick, considering they're, the two top high school guys in a draft that has that really strong core of college guys at the top, right?
Yeah, and I also think with the White Sox, like they don't even need to get too cute when it comes to maneuvering around these underslot deals. I think in this year's draft, their bonus pool is like 14 and a half or 14.6 million, which is fifth or sixth highest of everyone drafting. So they don't have to get too cute with this, which I think again is going to play in their favor.
Yeah, definitely. So that's interesting. There's tons of options at the 5th pick. I appreciate you providing kind of all of the scope of possibilities there. Going into the 2nd round, the White Sox are in an interesting spot because they have the 43rd pick, which is their own, and then they also have 2 picks in the 2nd, and then as well as right after the 2nd from a trade with the Mariners and the comp round. So they have 43 and then 68 and then also 78. So it's an interesting spot to be in. There's a lot of kind of ways they can go with that spot. And then it just is, three picks, obviously within a 30 pick range is always an interesting place to be in. Who are some guys in terms of looking at 43, first of all, who are some of your favorite, guys that you see as borderline 1st-round talents that could be in play at that early 40s spot in the draft?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like Ryan Waldschmidt from Kentucky, I know has been one of, if not the most like popular helium names, at least on the college position player side recently, with like the love he's getting. And I know that some sites and publications have him firmly in the 1st round, like inside the top 20 picks. Even I've talked to some scouts who don't quite have him in the 1st. 43 might be a little rich with Waldschmidt. But like if he's there, I think that that's someone that they should absolutely snag. And he's a left fielder for sure defensively. So you're going to have to really, really love the offense. And it's another one of those guys where it's like plus hit, plus power.
Nice.
And the offensive skill set is super advanced. So like you're going to be all in on the bat and the offense to take him there. So like I don't think he's going to make it to 43, but that's certainly one. High school right-hander Dax Whitney out of Blackfoot, Idaho, out of Blackfoot High School in Idaho. Like that could be kind of a ceiling pick play. 6'5", 195, really high-waisted kid. He's I think he's gonna be like 17, or he's
just turned 18 a little while
yeah,
ago.
he just turned 18, super, super young. Fastball, there's some now stuff there with his heater, up to 94 with some life. The curveball is flashed. Like you could dream on a lot of stuff with Whitney. And then another guy collegiately, if you want to go the college pitcher route, Ryan Johnson might be there. I don't know if he'll be there at 43, a little bit similar to Waldschmidt, but 6'6" right-hander at a Dallas Baptist. Had a first-team All-American type of season this year for the Patriots. It's a pretty interesting East-West profile with his fastball slider. Like his fastball has been up to 99, 100 miles an hour. It's big-time arm strength with him, and he mixes in a plus sweeper. I think the one knock on Johnson is right now the lack of a polished third pitch, kind of creating a little bit of reliever questions with him. And then also the fact that his fastball, at least metrically under the hood, it doesn't necessarily jump out at you. Like I think refining the shape is going to be a key for him. And then continuing to develop that third pitch as well. So like those are a couple of arms who could make sense. And then someone else that I really like, and he's gotten a lot of helium lately, is Luke Dickerson from New Jersey, and he is the popular comp has been not really comp, but like helium name of like Sammy Stafora. in the Northeast. Like he's not nearly as athletic as Stafora was. Like Stafora is a 70 athlete. Dickerson is not that, but he's been a very popular name up in this neck of the woods. So like 43 could make sense. I know. I think he'll be gone by 68, so 43 might be a little rich. So like weird middle ground with him.
Yeah.
And then at 68, like there are a number of college guys who could be in play, and I won't give a breakdown of all of them, but Cole Mathis from College of Charleston, Gage Jump from LSU, Kevin Bazell from Texas Tech is a really interesting one, Mike Sirota at Northeastern, another really, really interesting one. Didn't have a blow you away type of year that people were expecting him to have coming into this year. But he picked it up at the end. There are both now tools that he gets to in game. And then there's some, you can dream on his ceiling as well. And you kind of throw in the cherry on top of the wood bat performance. Like I like Sirota, and I think just him getting into pro ball is one, going to allow him to add some strength and physicality to his body, whether it's like 10, 15 or so pounds, like that'll make a big difference with him. And the growth and development of his power. And then I also think with him, it'll allow him to just kind of exhale a little bit and play free and easy. And that's when he's really going. And that's when everyone's going, honestly. But I think that'll allow him to get back to that playing loose. And then another like helium guy I'll throw in there is another college guy is Tennessee outfielder Dylan Dreiling, who I'm sure you guys both saw him a lot during the College World Series. He won Most Outstanding Player. Again, a kind of in the same mold of Ryan Waldschmidt, where it's like probably a left fielder defensively, but the offensive skill set and profile is really advanced. Like the approach and hit ability are both like borderline plus hit tool. Like I wouldn't dispute that grade. And then 55 or so power that he gets to in game. So there are a lot of really fun options. And then one last one is Kyle DeBarge at Louisiana. Like I don't even know if he'll make it to 43, but I don't know if he'll be there at 68. So he's another guy to follow. I just put him on the first team All-American team for BA. So as the listeners are now probably bored, but there are
not at all.
There are a lot of fun and intriguing guys that are going to be there probably for Chicago, whether it's 43 or 68.
You're lucky that our listeners are super huge White Sox nerds, so they would like to know about every possibility possible. So we appreciate all the insights. Sirota is an interesting name. I want to just circle back on him a tiny bit because I remember he was someone that was getting kind of first round helium, if I'm remembering right. Last year I was looking at some mocks and seeing him before the season at like a top 10 to 15 type of guy. So that'd be really interesting to see him as a possibility in the second or third round even.
Yeah, with Sirota, it sounds like, I wouldn't be totally shocked if he goes on, in the back part of day one, but it seems like a lot of teams would be thrilled to have him there with their third pick, but maybe a little iffy to pull the trigger on it with their second.
Yeah.
But even with that being said, like, I think that's a guy I'd be a little surprised if he made it out of day one.
Yeah. So that's great options for sure. Jeff, you got some?
Hey, Pete, one of the moves that the White Sox have made, last year with Grant Taylor and a year or two before with Peyton Paulette is they get this first-round talent pitchers who have had TJ and then fall back a bit in the draft. Are there some of those guys again this year?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of strain my brain a little bit. No one that maybe sticks out.
Not quite like Grant Taylor, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, no one that sticks out like a Grant Taylor, but like there are certainly guys that like Hagen Smith, for example, like he had an arm injury back in, I forget when it was, but like he doesn't have like necessarily a clean bill of health, but there's no one of like Grant Taylor's stature or Peyton Paulette's stature right now that is like a legit like of that, where it's like he missed his entire draft season or most of the entire draft season, and now he's going to still go pretty good. I guess Gage Jump also fits in there. Like he, I think he missed. He didn't pitch at all in 2023. Came back this year in 24. Pitched the entire year for LSU in their rotation. Was really good. So like I think that he might fit in there. Ryan Prager's another one who, similar to Jump, didn't pitch in 23. Came back, was excellent for A&M. Little rich for me with my second pick, maybe even my third pick, but I think that those are the guys, to me at least, that pop into my mind first.
Got you. Interesting for sure. One more guy I want to ask you about before we get to some late round guys. I don't know how to say his name, I'm gonna be honest, but the two-way pitcher from Mississippi State.
Oh,
what is your thoughts on him? Durangelo.
Cinta. I don't. As you can see, I'm still figuring it out. So
no, it's all good. What are your thoughts on him? Because I saw him pitch a few times, and I was like, "This is crazy," and he got a ton of like social media hype. But I'm just curious about him as an actual prospect as well.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, obviously, super viral, like big time social media guy because of the allure of being a both handed pitcher, the old BHP. But it's funny, like with him, he's a natural lefty, but I think it was his dad wanted to make him a shortstop growing up, or he wanted to play shortstop himself, so he like taught himself to throw left or right handed, and like he's got an absolute bazooka, and there's a ton of arm strength from the right side. Like he's probably more polished from just a pitchability standpoint from the left side, but stuff wise and velo wise, like he's more advanced from the right. So when you want to talk about guys that are doing both at the next level, like where Caglione is just going to be hitting and Durangelo is not a two-way guy, but like he'll pitch with both going forward until one side like burns out. So he's a really fun prospect, and he's certainly going to go on day one.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so going towards, we got a lot of good options in those early rounds, those early picks. Going towards the late part of the draft, any guys, rounds beyond round 5 that are really just you're a big fan of, or you just see being kind of value picks that are going to go later than they probably should?
Yeah, there are a couple of guys that jump out to me right away. The first is Rafe Parrish from Lehigh. I like him a lot. I kind of came around on him middle of this spring, but he swung the bat really, really well this year for Lehigh. I'll see what he ended up hitting. He hit 382 with 11 doubles, 6 home runs, more walks than Ks. Really strong-bodied kid at 6'3", 215. There's some length in his lower half. Like, he looks the part when you see him get off the bus. He's a switch hitter, but the vast majority of the sample size is from the left. And he handles himself really well at third. He makes all the plays he should. There's nothing overwhelming when it comes to the athleticism, but there's a little range to the glove side. The arm is plus. And I think that he's got enough of a defensive acumen to stick there long term. But for me with him, like what really stands out is all the under the hood stuff. Field hit is really advanced. The bat to ball skills are at least plus. There's an 88% overall contact rate, 95% against fastballs, and the in zone contact rate with him is 96%, including 98% against fastballs. And the approach is also really professional and advanced. Like he seldom expands the zone. I think the chase rate this year ended up being sub 20%, which is another box to check. So the impact is also there with him. Like I know you'll see, or people listening to this will hear 6 home runs at Lehigh and kind of scoff at that. The impact is there. Like he has the EV numbers are very impressive. And I think the key with him is just getting the ball up in the air a little bit more, and you're going to see the home run numbers climb. So I like him a whole lot. Like if you can get that in the 5th to 8th, 6th to 8th, like that's a money day 2 pick. And in a similar breath, and ironically enough, also in the Patriot League, Sean Keyes from Bucknell, another one of these kind of bat first corner infielders, though with him, I think he ends up at first base long term, unlike Parrish, where I have a little bit more faith in him being able to stick at the hot corner. But he had over 400 this year for Bucknell, 19 doubles, 13 home runs. With Keyes again, could leave the yard with 60s on the hit and 60 and a 60 on the power. I think it's more 55 hit and 60 power for me. But I saw firsthand last summer, it's real and it translates with Wood. Like he handles himself well against high level pitching. Pitch recognition skills are there, a lot like Parrish. Doesn't get outside the zone and stays within himself. he's another kind of sleeper guy. I don't really know how sleeper you can get. He was a combine invite, but that's another one that I really like. And then on the pitching side, I'll try and come up with one guy really quick. Someone that I thought was interesting, and I actually caught him like 10 days ago on the Cape, is 6'3" lefty Donovan Zach. And the next thing I'm going to say probably will make like listeners visibly cringe, but he's a double TJ guy. So the health track record is not great, but he's a 6'3" lefty, kind of this long, lengthy build where there's some room there to get him a little bigger. Fastball up on the Cape was up to 98 with life through the zone. Efforty delivery, strikes can escape him a little bit at times. Like, it's very much a guy that you were going to dream on the upside with. And I like late day 2, rounds 8 to 10. I think that's where he fits best. And he's an intriguing one. So I'm curious to see where he goes and who he ends up with, because there's some fun clay to mold with him.
Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. I love all these names. Now these are guys that are going to be on my radar now, which I appreciate. Last thing, and just some names out there. Any senior signings? We noticed last year, I mean, with the White Sox especially, they haven't been afraid in some later rounds to snag some seniors that have ended up being pretty productive players. I mean, you look at like a Ryan Galaney last year for the White Sox has been dominating this season. I know you know Galaney, and he's been great this year after being a senior signing last year. Some other guys in the organization as well that have done that for the White Sox. Any senior signing guys that are kind of those, 10, those low bonus guys that could end up being, a name for themselves?
Oh, that's another great question. I should have beefed up a little more on
you're good, man.
Senior signs. But can I throw like 3 more of the like later round guys?
You go for sure.
Keep an eye on Matt Halbach from UC San Diego, Sean Matson from Harvard, Nate Knowles from William and Mary. Maybe my favorite of the 3 I just named, especially Knowles. Like, those are guys on day 2 that I'm a real fan of, and I think that someone's going to get lucky with taking them. Jeremiah Jenkins from Maine, in a similar breath as those 3. Power is legit from the left side. But senior sign wise, you know what? To be honest, like, I'm not crazy well versed on the seniors in the class. Like, it's so tough now with all of the extra COVID years and everything. One guy that has stood out to me up on the Cape, though, who is a senior, is Jacob Schaefer from UNC Wilmington. You guys have another UNC Wilmington guy in the system.
Brooks Baldwin.
Yeah. He's a 6'8" righty, reliever all the way. He started, which is ironic to say or interesting to say, because he started 32 games in his last 2 years in college, but I've seen him start and I've seen him out of the bullpen. He's 1,000% a reliever. He's been up to, he's 94 to 96, up to a 7 from the right side, with a heavy sinker that's kind of a soul snatcher, especially against wood. And then he's developed his slider to a point where, it's become this above average pitch for him, and it's a sweeper that he can land for strikes, and he can also, get misses and chases with it out of the zone. Like, older guy at 22, he's a finished product physically, but it's a really interesting 1-2 punch that I think could play really well in the back end of a bullpen, and have him be a really effective late inning guy professionally.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, this has been incredibly informative, Pete. Before we let you go, I want to ask you I know obviously you're focused on the college side of things, and summer league and all that stuff. General just opinion on where the White Sox are at right now, because I know, like, it's been an ugly season. We all know this. We've all watched it, right? Of course. But at the same time, like, Jeff and I talk every week about prospects, and there's a lot of guys we really like in this farm system, and a lot of guys in the last few drafts that have, the drafts have been good. Mike Shirley's done a much better job. This is director of scouting in the past few years. Like, the drafts seem like they're going in a better direction, and we seem like every year we're seeing more and more players from the draft class look like, potential big league pieces, from, a Brooks Baldwin to a Mason Adams to a Galaney to all these guys who have been later round picks that we're seeing be good. And then in addition to, obviously, Noah Schultz and Jacob Gonzalez has looked great this year, and plenty of other guys within the system. So what are your thoughts just on where the White Sox are at right now?
They're getting there, and I think that's probably the same sentiment that you guys have. And, like, they're still sitting there right now, and the going's a little tough. I think at 24 and 60 something, 24 and 62, I'm almost positive. So it's like they're a ways away, but the pieces are assembling. And there are a lot of exciting guys right now in that system that give them some depth. And I think above all else, fans are reason to hope and be excited about the future. So I think that in this year's draft, whether it be making a splash at number 5 overall, or like you said, finding value in some of these later round guys, which they seem to have done an excellent job of at least in the last couple of drafts, like
Yep.
the system is only going to get deeper. It's only going to get better. So they have the pieces in place to continue to get more competitive as we go along here.
Awesome, man. That's what we're hoping to. We're on the same wavelength there. Pete, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I can't wait for the draft. I know you can't wait for the draft, and we will obviously talk when these picks come through and we see what happens with the 5th pick and everything else in this draft.
Absolutely, man. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a blast.